everyone. I'm Robyn Rowen, your Big I Minnesota lobbyist, and I'm here today with Jean Sundlof, Big I Board and Legislative Committee member. Jean also just wrapped up her tenure as the Big I's representative on the Legislative Task Force on Homeowners and Commercial Property Insurance, which is what we are talking about today. To refresh everyone's recollection, the task force was created last legislative session in response to concerns about the cost of property insurance, especially for affordable housing providers. Jean was the only official task force member representing the aging community, and she did an amazing job using the perspective of the independent agent to steer the task force away from recommendations that might provide short-term relief but would result in further market contraction and higher premiums overall. So welcome back, Jean, and thank you again for representing the Big I and the Odyssey that was the Property Insurance Task Force.
Well, hi, Robyn. Thank you so much for having me back. It's always nice to chat with you.
To give our viewers a sense of what serving on the Legislative Task Force was like, can you summarize your experience? Was it what you thought it would be, and were there any surprises?
Working on the property task force was tough, but it was really rewarding. I'm glad I got a chance to serve, and it really taught me a lot about our state government. One thing that stood out was just how tricky insurance still is for most people. Even when task force members meant well, and I think they typically did mean well, we found that they would focus on quick fixes at the expense of long-term results that might be dangerous or sometimes even disastrous for our industry and for the public as a whole. Also, they were really hesitant to address any issues that were not front and center right now. They wanted to wait until it became a big problem and I guess have another task force to discuss it at that point rather than talking about it. This really shows why we need to keep focusing on PR and educating the public. Our PR program, as well as the work of our legislative committee, has been super helpful in this regard. And honestly, those are just a few of the perks of Big I membership.
Great. That's actually very astute. I mean, you kind of just summed up what my job is, getting public policymakers who are focused on perhaps 2 years at a time to understand products that have very long tails and consequences way into the future.
Exactly.
So when I interviewed you back in August, before the official start of the task force, we had two goals. The first was to do no harm to the market. Based on the recommendations of the task force, did we meet that goal?
Well, back then, I laughed at the idea of that goal, and now it's obvious why you're successful as a lobbyist. It truly was our top priority. And I think we convinced most of the task force to oppose recommendations that might have negatively impacted the market. So we did accomplish what we set out to do on that goal.
Great. Now, our second goal, which you probably didn't laugh at back then, but maybe you're laughing at now, was to try and address some of the cost drivers that are contributing to premium increases. How did we do on that front?
Well, although the legislative results remain to be seen, because these are just recommendations, I believe that our recommendations were strong. We suggested funding the Strengthen Minnesota Homes program. As you know, we've had that in place, but with no money to back it, so it's been essentially useless. We urged the Department of Labor to review building codes for new construction and make some changes there. And we proposed catastrophic and mitigation savings accounts. And Robyn, those would be similar to HSAs on the health insurance side. Additionally, we were able to sneak in some suggestions regarding liability issues such as third-party litigation funding opposition and pursuing some tort reform.
We'll get to the tort reform issues in a minute because the task force spent a tremendous amount of time on those. But let's focus first on the proper role of the FAIR plan, which is something else the task force talked a lot about, and whether the plan should expand its product offerings to commercial property. Can you share why some of the task force members believe the FAIR plan is the answer to their current challenges in the market?
Some of the folks on the task force were just not too clear on how property insurance actually works. They didn't understand that we are a long tail. We have few losses, but catastrophic losses in the property arena. They have no concept of how reinsurance works, and despite trying to educate, that was an uphill battle. They did not connect the fact that if the FAIR Plan loses money, there would be big assessments against insurance companies, and those companies might leave the state. So everyone wanted quick fixes, but real progress, as we know, means tough choices to reduce claims.
Thanks, Jean. And while the task force only recommended studying fair plan expansion, which, hopefully that will provide them the answers that we want them to receive, which is that it is a bad idea. Um, and we were able to defeat a recommendation to expand the fair plan board so that there's a majority of public members as opposed to insurers. The DOC, I know, but the DOC, Department of Commerce and others still might have separate legislation to expand the board to create a majority of public members. So we're not out of the woods on that one.
Right. Yes, that's very true. It's a frustrating issue with the task force, and I felt that at times the Department of Commerce was our friend, and at times they were not completely connecting some of the consequences as well. So challenging both ways.
Welcome to my life. Yes.
Yes.
So let's stay on the theme of frustration. So, one of the other frustrating aspects of the task force deliberations was the lack of understanding and seemingly bias against surplus lines. And this was despite our very best efforts to educate the members of the task force on this. And just a quick aside to thank Jake Olinger and Matt Lynch for doing such a great job testifying in front of the task force on the important role of the surplus lines market. So, Jean, can you relay some of the reasons your fellow task force members are uncomfortable with the E&S market?
Well, some task force members, including representatives from the Department of Commerce, pointed out that policyholders in the E&S market are not protected by the Guarantee Fund. And Matt Lynch from RPS did a really nice job of pointing out an interesting fact. Insolvency rates have actually been much higher in the standard market than when we compare them to the E&S market. So it's clear we need better education on these topics, kind of my theme of the day.
Okay.
Also, the group was worried about oversight of the E&S sector. Insurance folks tried to stress that E&S helps consumers because of the fact that they can move quickly to be flexible for new needs, and they can provide specialized products. If we add the lengthy governmental approval process to this, we'll lose those advantages.
I think sometimes it's very hard for the Department of Commerce to believe that if they don't regulate it, it's okay. So again, more education is needed.
Exactly, because really the E&S marketplace does a great job of regulating itself.
100%. And it's there when the standard market doesn't have a product to offer that can be competitive. So we'll keep working on that. Tort reform and especially third-party litigation funding was another area that generated a lot of debate amongst task force members. Why was this topic so controversial?
Well, two reasons. First, the task force members only wanted to talk about property. They said the name of this task force is Property Task Force, and we don't want to go down that path. Second, the plaintiffs' bar came out in strong opposition and actually tried to turn the tables, arguing that they were the representative of the consumer and we were representing big bad business. So again, education is the key.
100%. And just as a quick follow-up, up. So the task force didn't recommend specific action on third-party litigation funding. It did say the legislature should look into it, but there is actually legislation currently pending in both the House and the Senate. It's Senate File 2929 and House File 2677 if anyone wants to do research at home. But those bills would corral third-party litigation funding, which again, we said you might not see that much of it here, but it's coming and it's happening in other states. So why not get ahead of it? But again, the plaintiffs' bar said, stood in the way. But we will be working with our industry partners to try and get both those bills a hearing this session. So Jean, anything else you want to let our viewers know from your experience? Please don't discourage anyone for volunteering for a task force.
No, I would do it again. I really did enjoy the process. It was work, but it was a great educational experience, and I'm glad I did it. What I'd like to add is that it's just vital that our legislators hear directly from our members. So when somebody from our legislative committee reaches out to you and asks you to make a call to one or more of your legislators, please take a moment to make that call. Your involvement truly matters. Plus, many of the votes, as you know, were very close. And if Big I, Minnesota had not been at the table, things could have turned out very differently. So the work that Big I, Minnesota does at the legislature really does matter for you and your agency.
I could not have said that better myself. Thank you, Jean. In terms of next steps, the House Commerce Committee will be holding a hearing on the task force's recommendation this week, and that will give us a good sense of whether any of the task force's recommendations actually have legs this session. To wrap up, I want to thank Jean again for all of her exceedingly hard work representing the Big I, and I also want to thank Bill Butler and Chad Bugan for stepping up as alternates when Jean was unavailable. You should be able to find a copy of the task force included with this video if you want to learn more about their deliberations and recommendations. And thanks to you all for watching, and I will see you next time for a legislative update.